All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel, and we delve into great theories of everything, all encompassing theories, cosmologies, grand unified theories about our reality, and particularly if they can help us with our spiritual, mental, and physical health, our formation of a new paradigm, our awakening to 5D consciousness, our formation of a holistic worldview. Today is our 56th video on Daniel Ingram's book, Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. And, Ingram does have this book on his site that you can just listen to it. But I like to read it into my own channel so that it's part of the library. And I also add some commentary interspersed sometimes. So I feel like it's a good thing for me to read this in. This is really about everything that you could want to know about Buddhism, all condensed into one volume. No, it's not telling you not to read anything else, but this is the one-stop shop and good place to start. And Ingram spent a lot of time over in monasteries in the Far East, and a lot of time meditating in retreats, 18, 20 hours a day for months at a time. And he has gone over this territory over and over and over again and reporting back to us in English. And so, a lot of times we have to rely on translations and second, third-hand reports or things from 1,000 or 2,000 years ago to understand Buddhism. So this is a good place to start, and then you can dig deeper from there. But this goes pretty deep. So we are in, I think, chapter 34, but this is on, we're about to do the last paragraph of the section on Bill Hamilton's model of the Vipassana jhanas. And I was hoping to get that done yesterday, but we'll do it to start here and then move into the next section. In this way, it is possible to see models within models within models. And if you practice long and clearly enough with the models in mind, you will run into this aspect of what happens as we navigate the wide territory of meditation. The warnings about the problems with the models apply even more to the subjhana models and deeper fractal theories of meditation terrain. These complex models are a largely endless subject whose usefulness is debatable and whose perils are well known. Consider yourself duly warned. That said, as I describe later, I suspect that learning to shift fluidly across the jhanas and jnanas and their various sub-aspects was of real benefit to my practice. Now, this section is called Fractals. Unfortunately, I somehow am not able to keep myself from presenting just a few of the basics of fractal theory here, particularly as it relates to Bill's model. The pattern I am about to present is universal. Resonances of it are found as far back as the beginnings of recorded history, science, mathematics, religion, and art. If you consider the first 360 degrees of a sine wave, you will notice that it starts at zero, goes up in a hill-like way, peaks, descends below where it started in a valley-like way, bottoms out, and then returns to the same level at which it began, but yet farther along. Were we walking along this curve, we would have to make effort to climb up the hill. We would then have a spectacular view and a great sense of accomplishment having nearly reached the top. We might then try to keep walking up to get more of this exhilaration, but end up sliding down the other side of the hill to a point even lower than where we began. And yet this is still progress and could even be somewhat thrilling and effortless with the right attitude. Just when we get to the very bottom, trapped and coming to rest in the darkest part of the pit, the upward motion begins to happen naturally, and we return to where we were, ground zero, and yet farther on at the same time. A cycle is complete and yet begins again repeatedly. This easily correlates with the first four Vipassana jhanas, as well as many other obvious cycles such as those of the sun and the seasons, etc. For those trying to correlate the maps of the progress of insight with those of pagan and nature-based traditions, this should prove helpful. The first Vipassana jhana is climbing up the hill. Eager beginnings, hard work, dawn, spring, east, the newly waxing moon, etc. The second Vipassana jhana is the giddy high of accomplishment at the top of the hill, high noon, summer, south, the full moon, etc. The third Vipassana jhana is the exhilarating and yet scary fall down the other side into a cool and shadowy valley, dusk and nightfall, autumn, west, the waning moon, etc. The fourth Vipassana jhana is coming to rest regardless of where we are and returning to our origin naturally, the cool of the dead of night and early morning, winter and the promise of springtime, the coming of a new year at the end of the old, a time of rest, completion, and renewal, north, the new moon, etc. We may also correlate this with some of the models of awakening, particularly the four-path model and the simple model of awakening, both of which will be explained later. Interestingly, we may begin to see a full cycle of each of these stages in each of the four Vipassana jhanas as well, with each peak and valley adding or subtracting from the position of the greater wave. It is an aspect of. For all you incurable model geeks, try plotting y equals sine of x plus 0.25 sine of 4x from 0 to 2 pi on a graphing program. Here are the results. And so if you want to do that, you can see the results. I may take a screenshot of this and put it on the thumbnail, but there are several of these graphs here, so I'm not sure which I would do, but we'll have to figure that out. But it's basically a sine wave, but then it's another sine wave within that sine wave, which is only a quarter of the wavelength of the first sine wave. So there's more peaks and valleys and, lesser peaks and valleys. You have my sympathy. The x-axis is the jhanas and sub-jhanas. If you want to go into sub-jhanas, which would involve adding another 0.0625 times sine of 16x. So he's using a multiple of 4 here, just like he did with the jhanas to sub-jhanas, going from 4 jhanas to 16 stages. And now we're going to 64 of them to the above equation. Unfortunately, what goes on the y-axis could be the subject of a book longer than this one, and would read like the most difficult works of Aleister Crowley, but simple points are made here shortly, with graphs included that hopefully you will find much more practical than esoteric. The possible complexity of this model is endless, and it is no substitute for practice. Try not to become an arrogant twit like I did when I began to figure all this stuff out. Esoteric map theory won't win you any friends or enhance your loving kindness, and its benefits for finally figuring out the key points of insight practice are questionable at best. I spent way too much time thinking about the fractals and modeling in my own practice. In my insecure moments, I have considered showing off and writing a book that detailed the hundreds of little parallels and patterns that I have noticed over the years, how this little tiny stage of some Vipassana subjhana mirrored or was an inversion of another aspect of some other little stage or some other sub-subjhana. But I couldn't come up with any practical use for it at all. If you do the technique, you may see all of this and more. If not, reading about it won't help you. On the other hand, if you are built like me, really like this stuff, and can use it to investigate the fine points of reality, then perhaps this will validate and resonate with your explorations. You don't need this at all to see the true nature of the experience field, as that is more fundamental than these specifics. On the other hand, traditions such as Kabbalah, however you spell it, seem to have made related complex permutations into meditation itself. I've done the same on, if you check out, at least on my YouTube channel, BitChute channel, my 144 fractal faculties of the Tree of Life. So check out those videos. Those who are particularly inclined to complex analysis might want to try taking it as a vehicle for going beyond it. Also, guess where the complex geometric Tibetan mandalas that are supposed to be representations of enlightened awareness and its universe come from? Bingo. All that said, I did strip all the complex theory down to come up with a series of images that highlight some of the simple practical points that come from deep fractal-based map theory. And here they are. The graphs basically use an arbitrary -4 to +4 scale to give a general sense of how that aspect, such as need for sleep or level of motivation, might be in each stage. Individual variation is normal. You will notice a few oddities that are peculiar to me. For example, that I find fear, stage 6, somewhat pleasant, is likely anomalous and likely an artifact of me being an adrenaline junkie. Many may not experience everything the way these diagrams show it, but still they may have some general applicability. So his first graph is the vertical axis is motivation to practice, and he goes up and down on there. Your motivation to practice is highest at the beginning, mind and body, and then again at arising and passing away, and then actually also just between disgust, number 8, and desire for deliverance, number 9. It's at its lowest right before the 3 characteristics, right after cause and effect. Closer to the 3 characteristics, it's really at the nadir, very close. Also at dissolution, stage 5, and then it's also at its lowest point at reobservation, stage 10. It begins to rise with equanimity. I begin with an easy one, the relationship between stages and general level of motivation to practice. In mind and body, the mind is generally bright and we are excited. In cause and effect, things are just odd in a neutral sort of way. The 3 characteristics stage tends to involve lots of pain, which can be demotivating. The arising and passing away stage is generally awesome, the peak of our inspiration to practice for positive reasons. In dissolution, we feel like couch potatoes, so our motivation is low. Fear, stage 6, helps our motivation a bit, but by itself can be disconcerting for many. Misery, stage 7, is about the same, However, in disgust, stage 8, and desire for deliverance, stage 9, we can suddenly be motivated, but this time for more aversive, renunciate reasons, and reasons related to a deep existential angst for awakening or release. Reobservation is one of the hardest stages, and motivation to practice can be at an all-time low. Equanimity helps, but often it involves somewhat low motivation to practice, as everything may seem too nice to need to do much of anything. Need for sleep tends to increase in the 3 characteristics, mostly due to how tiring pain can be. Sleep need can drop dramatically in the stage of the arising and passing away, suddenly peak in dissolution, drop a bit again in fear as our energy returns, and increase during the dark night, mostly due to how mentally fatiguing that stage can be. The degree to which we feel hot or cold in our bodies also varies by stages. This body temperature variation can also relate to the tendency to perspire. As the early stages build to the arising and passing away stage, our sense of body heat increases. It drops a lot in dissolution, and we may suddenly feel colder than we did just one stage before. We may sweat a bit more in fear. It tends to increase a bit due to the struggle of reobservation also. And he's got a graph here of the sleep need and a graph of the body temperature. And they are different. Then the next one is clarity of the center of attention. And I'm sure he'll explain it as we go. The degree to which we clearly perceive sensations at the center of our attention becomes more developed as we move up the early jhanas, peaks at the arising and passing stage, drops suddenly as we shift into the 3rd jhana and dissolution, and increases just a bit as the energy comes back in fear and disgust, plummets again in reobservation, and increases in equanimity, though not to the degree that it was present in the arising and passing away, oddly enough. And that is interesting graph. The one for the next one, clarity of the periphery as opposed to the center of attention. This one is almost not even really a sine wave. It bottoms out in dissolution, and then by the time you get to fear, it's way up, and it stays up for the whole, I guess for the whole 3rd jhana, and then it begins to dip there with equanimity, stage 11. I'm sure he'll talk about it here. The intensity of clarity regarding the periphery of attention, on the other hand, is only somewhat developed in the early stages, drops off again in dissolution, peaks in the dark night stages, culminating in reobservation, oddly enough, and drops a bit in equanimity, whose balance across all aspects of attention is more pronounced, thus losing a bit of clarity in each area. And then he's got a graph here for mind speed. And the mind speed is the highest at the arising and passing away stage. It's also, it's bottoms out at dissolution, and it goes up then and peaks out again right before reobservation. The speed of our minds increases dramatically in the early stages of insight, peaks in the arising and passing, drops dramatically in dissolution, ramps up again in fear, drops back in misery, peaks again in reobservation, but mostly around the periphery, and oddly is back to what feels like near baseline in equanimity, whose strengths are more integrative, accepting, and flowy than rapid fire analysis. Then he's got another graph here for energetic phenomena. Energetic phenomena, often referred to as Kundalini phenomena, begin in cause and effect, peak in the arising and passing away, drop off dramatically in dissolution, may increase a bit in fear, drop off for most of the dark night, may occur a bit in reobservation, and are generally not happening in equanimity. Then this next one is pain versus pleasure. Pain negative, pleasure positive. The pleasure is highest at the rising and passing away. And actually, when we get to the dark night, we're still kind of above the 0 point until we get halfway between fear and misery, stages 6 and 7. And then it bottoms out right before reobservation. The degree of pain and pleasure we generally experience in our bodies also varies by stages. In mind and body, our body tends to feel good. Shortly thereafter, in 3 characteristics, it often feels tense and painful. The arising and passing is typically the peak of pleasure, insight stage-wise, being second jhana-based. Dissolution also feels good, but in a much more relaxed way. Fear generally doesn't involve much pain, and the physical feeling of our body in fear is typically slightly pleasant in the thrills and chills, if we can notice this. Pain returns as the dark night progresses, and our body and mind may feel progressively worse as the restlessness and irritation at phenomena in general peak in reobservation. The edgy, restless, irritating pain of reobservation tends to differ in quality from the hard, stiff pain of the state of the 3 characteristics. Equanimity may involve mild pain, but there is also something nice about the neutrality of body feel we can notice in equanimity. So I give it a slightly positive rating. Okay. The stages most prone to spontaneous powers are the arising and passing away and equanimity. They are very unlikely in the dark night and the least likely in reobservation unless we have unusually strong concentration skills or a strong natural inclination in that direction. Some propensity to powers may return in equanimity, but the motivation for them often drops off, thus partially modulating this stage's remarkable powers potential. Certain stages are more prone to reducing or exacerbating tendencies to mental illness, mind and body, as it provides a clear space around thoughts, tends to make people saner, and for this reason really helps with psychological work. The arising and passing is distinctly prone to exacerbating manic phases, grandiosity, and moments of agitated psychosis. Dissolution is so chill that mental illness again becomes less likely, though it does have demotivating elements. The dark night is well known to possibly exacerbate depression, social isolation, schizoid tendencies, and anxiety. Reobservation is the peak of the risk for illness, mental illness, particularly regarding paranoia, psychosis, and suicidal ideation. Equanimity tends to reduce mental illness tendencies given its open spaciousness and general sense of well-being. Okay, so he's got that graph there, and another attention phase harmony is a hard thing to explain unless you are adept at noticing the degree to which phenomena and attention seem to be in synchrony. This quality peaks in mind and body, the arising and passing away, and equanimity, which are generally also the least unpleasant stages and the closest to their shamatha jhana counterparts. It is at its worst in reobservation, but can also feel moderately off in the 3 characteristics. Dissolution is an oddity. in that it has good phase harmony, but I put it as neutral since most people don't notice this at all, given the nature of dissolution. Attention phase harmony also correlates well with where the shamatha jhanas and stages of insight are the closest, and dissolution is the closest insight stage to the third shamatha jhana. Okay, that is the end of that section on Bill Hamilton's models and I guess the fractals. I don't know. I think the fractals are mostly Ingram stuff, but he put it in Hamilton's model. But this next section is on U Pandita's model. Sayadaw U Pandita was one of the greatest contemporary masters of meditation in the Burmese Theravada tradition. And he recommends you see his book called In This Very Life. Though he helped to train Bill Hamilton and a few other people who helped train me, U Pandita's models don't quite agree with those of Bill and myself about how the jnanas and jhanas line up. I thought that in the interest of fairness and the inherent value in engaging multiple perspectives, I would present his model. In it, as in Bill's, the first three stages of mind and body, cause and effect, and the three characteristics all fall within the first Vipassana jhana. However, U Pandita divides the arising and passing stage into two jhanas, with the immature phase when the meditator is still in the grip of the 10 corruptions of insight, corresponding to the second jhana, and the mature phase when the meditator sees the true nature of the 10 corruptions of insight and crosses the arising and passing away event as the third jhana. Everything from dissolution to equanimity then falls into the fourth jhana in his model. This does accommodate the vague, formless experiences that can happen in dissolution, as the formless realms come out of the fourth jhana. The problem I see with this map is like the problem with the other maps, namely that some of the stages of insight tend to suck, and the shamatha or pure concentration jhanas are usually pleasant or peaceful. Thus, to say that the dark night stages such as disgust are part of the fourth jhana just rubs me the wrong way somehow, as does saying that three characteristics, which also tend to suck a bit, is part of the pleasant first jhana. Further, dissolution is oh so close to the third shamatha jhana, and it is very easy to shift the one into the other and back again. The same is true of the arising and passing stage and the second shamatha jhana. The point is that no matter how you slice it, the correlations are not quite perfect, and insight practice is rarely as pleasant as good old concentration practices. That said, there is something to these models anyway, and if you master insight and concentration practices and know a bit of theory, you will see for yourself what they were trying to get at. So get to it. Okay, this section is called One More Model. The last model is one that is hinted at by a line in the Visuddhimagga that says that desire for deliverance, reobservation, and equanimity, stages 9, 10, and 11, are one. This cryptic phrase may be interpreted various ways, one being that the content of these stages is likely to be largely the same, while the relationship to the content may change dramatically. It could also be used as justification for a third model that puts these three together in the fourth jhana. Further, as the fourth Vipassana jhana is about equanimity concerning formations, we might presume that we would have had to perceive formations at an earlier stage, such as at the previous two, to have had the necessary time and experience to come to equanimity regarding them. Go see for yourself and consider which of these three models presented here fits with your actual experience, or throw this book and its models out the window and investigate the three characteristics precisely, regardless of what happens. Such decisions might be better made after reading the next chapter. And the next chapter is called How the Maps Help. And I think we will wait and start this up tomorrow. And so come back and we will learn how the maps help. Thanks for tuning in today and have a great